So here we are once again with another UFC Ultimate Flour Championship. And truth be told, I didn't set out for this to be a series. It really was supposed to be just that one video where I was comparing all-purpose flours. But I guess that wasn't enough. You know, you can't please everybody. Some people complained that I didn't compare bread flour or baker's flour to the all-purpose flour. So, you know, even after doing 6 different flours and creating 6 breads, that wasn't enough. People wanted me to do a comparison between the all-purpose and the baker's flour. So that's what we're doing today. So if you didn't watch the last episode, or the first episode I should say, I would suggest, you know, stopping this one, go and look at the first one for context, and then you could come back and watch this one. This Ibis All Purpose Flour was my pick in terms of the all-purpose flour that gave the best results. And this is usually my go-to all-purpose flour. And I will be comparing it in this video against the Lotus baker's flour and the Country Pride baker's flour. So we're gonna do the same process, same ingredients, same recipe, and look at, you know, what final results that we get when it comes to the bread that we get. So let's get into it. So just to recap the ingredients for the Ibis all-purpose flour, that includes wheat flour, calcium carbonate, niacin, fungal alpha amylase, ascorbic acid, reduced iron, maturing agent, bleaching agent, thiamine mononitrate, riboflavin, and folic acid. The ingredients for the Lotus baker's flour: wheat flour, calcium carbonate, anti-caking agent, fungal alpha amylase, niacin, ascorbic acid, reduced iron, maturing agent, bleaching agent, thiamine mononitrate, riboflavin, folic acid. The ingredients for the Country Pride baker's flour: wheat flour, calcium carbonate, fungal alpha amylase, ascorbic acid, cornstarch, niacin, iron, thiamine, riboflavin, folic acid. So a quick word on the difference between baker's flour and all-purpose flour. The baker's flour is supposed to be a stronger flour. Stronger is the jargon that they use to describe a flour that has more protein content. And what the protein content does is allows for more gluten development. And the Lotus baker's flour has 14 grams of protein per cup, where the Ibis has 12 grams, 12.3 grams to be exact, per cup. The very interesting thing is that the Country Pride baker's flour has 12 grams of protein. So you would expect the Country Pride baker's flour to have more protein than the Ibis all-purpose flour, but it doesn't. So that is a curious thing. Just something to note before we jump in. And now that, you know, we have that out of the way, let's get to making some bread. Okay, so we're starting off with the Ibis all-purpose flour. We're gonna make our bread, and I'm following the same recipe that I did in the previous video. I'm not gonna make any changes to that. So we have 3.5 cups of flour, 2 teaspoons of sugar, 2 teaspoons of salt. Mix this together. 2 teaspoons of yeast. Combine that into the flour. 2 tablespoons of vegetable shortening. Just going to combine this. Now we add in 1 cup of lukewarm water. We're going to bring this together into a bowl and then transfer it onto our work surface. Alright, so now that we have our ball of dough here, we're going to start kneading it for the required 8 minutes until it comes together and a smooth ball of dough is formed. Alright, so that's the 8-minute mark on this dough. Come together nice. So now I'm just going to place it in a bowl, and you're going to let this proof for 45 minutes. Alright, so the dough has doubled in size after the 45 minutes. It's going to punch the air out, transfer it onto our surface, And just like in the previous video, we're going to roll it out to about 1/4 inch thick. And now we're going to roll it onto itself, making sure that we tuck it in tightly every time we roll. Alright, so now we're going to place the dough into the bread pan. Okay, so now we have the loaf in the grease pan, and I'm going to cover it and allow it to proof for another 25 minutes, and then I'm going to pop it in the oven at 350 degrees for 30 minutes. Alright, so now on to the Lotus baker's flour. Mix that in. 2 tablespoons of vegetable shortening. Alright, so we have our ball that come together here, and now we're going to knead it for the 8 minutes. And this dough already feels a lot stickier than the Ibis All Purpose Flour. Not say that it's a sticky dough, but definitely stickier than the Ibis All Purpose. So we'll see what kind of bread we get from this dough. Alright, so that is the 8-minute mark for this dough. Same procedure as before. We're going to place it in a bowl, cover it, and allow it to proof for 45 minutes. Alright, so our dough has rested for 45 minutes. Now punch the air out, transfer it to the work surface, and now we're going to roll it out. Alright, so I have our loaf formed. Just going to place it into our pan, and then of course allow this to proof for 25 minutes, and then into the oven at 350 degrees for 30 minutes. Okay, so last but not least, we have the Country Pride baker's flour. We're doing our 3.5 cups of flour, 2 teaspoons of sugar, 2 teaspoons of salt, 2 teaspoons of yeast, 2 tablespoons of vegetable shortening, and 1 cup of lukewarm water. Alright, so our Country Pride baker's flour dough has come together. Now we're going to knead it for the 8 minutes, and this one feels just as tacky as the Lotus baker's flour. It's not as dry as the Ibis All Purpose Flour dough was. So we're going to knead it 8 minutes, bring it together, and eventually we'll see what kind of bread we get. Okay, so that's it. Our 8 minutes on this dough is up. So, as usual, into a bowl, we're going to cover it and allow it to proof for 45 minutes, and then move on to the next step. Okay, so our dough has risen, and now it's time to punch the air out, transfer it onto our surface, and roll it out into a 1/4 inch thick slab, which we will be rolling onto itself to form our loaf. Placing our loaf into the pan, and usual procedure, we're gonna allow this to proof for 20 minutes and then into the oven at 350 degrees for half an hour. Alright, right, so my 3 loaves are out of the oven, and I have each bread lined up with its respective flour, so you would know which one is which. And let me tell you, in here smelling real good, heavenly. I can't wait to dig in. But just, from outward appearance, let me just give you some quick thoughts on, how we looking. The one that had the most rise, that, the tallest bread, was the Lotus Baker's Flour. And the one with the least was the Ibis All Purpose. Now, the bread that gave the most consistent crust and color and everything was the Country Pride. But also remember that when I looked at the ingredients, there was no significant difference between the Country Pride and the Ibis All Purpose. And one thing to remember is that the difference between the Country Pride Baker's Flour and the Ibis All Purpose Flour was a 0.3 grams of protein per cup. The Ibis All Purpose is 12.3 grams of protein per cup, while the Country Pride is 12 grams per cup. The Lotus Baker's Flour is 14 grams. So just bear that in mind. I find, for a baker's flour, the Country Pride doesn't have any discerning qualities, I should say. A 0.3 grams ain't nothing to write home about, so kind of questionable. So all of them gave a really nice crust. I can't say that any of them gave a bad crust. Of course, you know that the Ibis All Purpose Flour gives a good crust and a good bread, so it was expected that it would, produce these kind of results. I really like the kind of home style rustic finish that the Lotus Baker's Flour gave us, but in terms of consistency, like a nice consistent color, the Country Pride really gave a nice consistent color on the crust. But personal preference, I like this kind of rustic feel that the Lotus gave us. But as we all know, you cannot judge a bread by its crust, by its cover. We had to go in, cut it, slice it, and really see what's going on under the hood. All right, so first on the chopping block, we have the Ibis All Purpose Flour loaf. Going in to give it a cut. And yeah, looking good, looking good. I mean, we did do this bread in the previous video, so it was expected that we would get good results. And I mean, check us out here. Nice crumb, nice firm bread, but soft. Have a nice crust going on. Firm bread, but still soft. Strong bread, strength. This bread has strength. Okay. So yeah, the Ibis, is a consistently good flour. It gives good bread, pancakes, bake, fry, bake. It does deliver. I had to say that. So, no surprise, the Ibis bread, same things. No surprise there. All right, next up is our Lotus Baker's Flour bread. And we got a real nice, pretty swirl here, I must say. Nice swirl. And again, an impressive crust. I like this crust, real home style. So let me go in for the cut. Alright. So, right off the bat, I can just watch this and tell it's softer than the Ibis All Purpose. Look at that. I hope the camera could pick up that detail, but I find, the texture-wise, it's a softer texture, but still, a nice crust on the outside. Soft as like layers, but still strong. You see that? It didn't go rip apart easily when you're making a sandwich. It didn't go fall apart. Now it's still a strong bread. Can't find the words. I need to dig deep in my vocabulary to try and find the words to explain to you the difference in flavor. This bread tasted more bready than the previous bread. I know that not making no sense, but I really don't have the words to describe it. This bread tasted more like a bread than the other bread. Not that the other bread didn't taste like a bread enough, but this bread tastes more like a bread than the other bread. Yeah, I know this isn't making no sense. But, wow. You know what it is? I'll tell you what it is. This tasting like your grandmother bread. This is what this tasting like. This is like your mother bread. This tasting like back in the day, Saturday night, when my mother make bread and scouting for talent going on. Yeah. This is what this bread tasting like. Real home. You see, I know it, you know. I know it. From the time I watched the crust, I know we had a real home style bread happening here. And let me tell you, flavor wise, it didn't disappoint. This is a real home style. So far, this gained the award for home style. This is a home style bread. So last but not least, we have the Country Pride loaf. And like I said, nice crust. But let me get to the meat of the matter. Let me go in. Look at that. Flaky. All right. Give us a kind of flakiness that the others didn't give, which is always a nice thing. Soft. Actually softer than the Lotus. Softer than the Lotus. And actually smelling the bread stronger than the others. Like I actually gained the bread scent. Real hitting me as I cut this. It just kind of wafting and just hitting my nose, which is a nice sensory experience, I must say. Okay. I'll give it a little taste. For some reason, this bread tasting a little sweeter than the others. Now, you know that I use the same recipe, same measurements for everything, but I definitely tasting more sugar in this. Sweeter. Not bad, eh? It's just sweeter. Okay. Nice flaky crust. Kind of flakiness that the others didn't give, which is a real nice finish. It almost like I have like a kind of hops finish to the crust, which is real nice. Who do like a hops crust on the bread? Okay. Again, my sweetness. I don't know where that sweetness coming from, but it definitely have a little more sugar going on, a little more sweet going on than the other breads. So if you want to be pedantic about your bread and is a real master baker and you want to make sure that your bread perfect every time, I would say go for the Ibis baker's flour and you will get a real nice bread. Perfect bread, home style, great flavor, great rice, great crust, texture and everything on point. If you don't want to pay extra money, I mean it's not that much money, but if you don't want to pay extra money for the baker's flour and you want something that is all purpose, no pun intended, use the Ibis. The Ibis gives a good bread. There's nothing wrong with this bread. So you could use your Ibis flour, make your bread, make your bake, make your pancakes, whatever the case may be, your muffins. You could trust the Ibis All Purpose, it delivers. The Country Pride, I ain't too sure what's going on with it. Not that it giving a bad bread. The bread was very good, exceptional bread. But the fact of the matter is, it's just 0.3 grams difference. 0.3 grams difference to the all-purpose flour. So it's like, why? I don't know. I'm not too sure what's going on with this Country Pride in terms of the labeling and the ingredients and what makes it baker's flour. Or what differentiates it from bakers to all-purpose. I find 0.3 grams ain't nothing to talk about. So, I know. Don't blame me. I didn't make the flour. I just make the bread. So, I mean, again, this is nothing scientific. It is nothing to say, take my word as gospel. You could do your own experimentation if you want, and if you have a flour that you prefer, by all means, let me know in the comments. Yeah, so this was a fun little exercise. I had no intentions of making this a two-part series, but Ole beat up in the first one and tell me I didn't choose baker's flour and then I'm pretty sure somebody gonna comment on this one and say, but how come you didn't use this brand, and wherever the case may be. Listen, a lot of effort went into this. So please, show your support, show your appreciation, and give me a like, give me a thumbs up on the video, drop a little share, and of course, if you're not subscribed to the channel, please, please, please subscribe for more great content. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.